Hello, this is Davey. I'll be checking out 10 WWE wrestlers who quit Roids and lost their muscle from WrestleMania. Okay, let's go.
Champion! This is the state of the champion!
What can be gained? Whoa! Need a hand. Oh, no, don't touch me. I'm on Megan.
Now, professional wrestling has always been larger than life. From the golden era of Hulk Hogan to the Attitude Era of The Rock and Triple H, one thing was definitely clear. Physiques mattered in wrestling. It was a business built on spectacle, as having a superhero body wasn't just a bonus, it was often the difference between mid-card obscurity and main event superstardom. However, there was a dark secret that was revealed behind these big physiques, as steroids and performance-enhancing drugs were rampant in wrestling at the time. The bigger you looked, the better chance you had of catching Vince McMahon's eye. When the infamous WWE steroid scandal rocked the company in the early 90s, the entire wrestling world was forced to look at the consequences of years of drug use. Many wrestlers who had then built their image on size suddenly had to adapt, either by quitting steroids or facing suspension, health risks, or even legal action. While some of these WWE superstars quit steroids during their time wrestling, some had stopped much later, giving themselves a more natural physique outside of wrestling. Join us now as WrestleMania looks at 10 WWE wrestlers who quit steroids and lost their muscle. Number 1. The Rock. If you look back at The Rock in the late 90s, he was lean, athletic, and muscular, but nowhere near the massive physique that we saw in his later years. If you compare those photos to his body in 2023, it almost looks like two different people. The Rock in his more advanced stage of 40s and 50s has become even bigger and more shredded than ever, which is where much of the controversy begins. Fitness experts like Greg Doucette and Derek from More Plates, More Dates have broken down The Rock's physique in detail, pointing out signs that suggest possible use of steroids or hormone replacement therapy. Even Joe Rogan, a personal friend of Johnson, has publicly doubted his claim of being all natural. There's not an effing chance in hell he's clean, not a chance in hell as big as The Rock is at 50. The point is, you can't even get there with HRT, hormone replacement therapy. That's not HRT. He's so massive and he's so different than he was when he was 30. Testosterone levels and natural muscle building ability decline significantly after the age of 40. And while it's not impossible to maintain a great physique naturally, building and sustaining The Rock's level of muscle mass at 50 is extremely rare. However, Johnson has built a brand around being the hardest worker in Hollywood. His Instagram is filled with brutal workouts and his famous Iron Paradise gym. Yet in 2025, The Rock shocked fans when he appeared noticeably slimmer at the Venice Film Festival. The Rock had just recently finished filming the movie The Smashing Machine, as it depicted former amateur wrestler and MMA fighter Mark Kerr in a biographical movie. However, when fans saw The Rock at the Venice Film Festival, he looked much slimmer than usual. The Rock explained that the weight loss was for his role in the film Lizard Music. Once again, rumors fled that he may have cycled off performance enhancers, but Johnson heavily denied it. The Rock explained the reason for the weight transformation, as he felt a desire to be taken seriously as an actor after years of being a typecast. The new slimmer appearance for The Rock likely means that his days in the wrestling ring are truly over. Number 2. Batista. If you thought The Rock's transformation was surprising, Dave Batista's was downright shocking. At his WWE peak, Batista was a true powerhouse, weighing nearly 290 pounds of pure muscle. When Batista started his second career as an actor, it then forced him to rethink his body. While his role as Drax the Destroyer in Guardians of the Galaxy showcased his massive frame, Batista always felt that he wanted to be taken seriously as an actor, not just a typecast as a big muscle guy. His weight fluctuated between roles, and when he landed a major role in Knock at the Cabin, Batista looked incredibly different. In fact, he had gained weight. For that film, he intentionally bulked up with a heavy diet in pancakes and fries, but once the shoot ended, he quickly dropped 75 pounds. In interviews, Batista explained that he felt uncomfortably big and that the extra weight was hurting his health. It was believed that when Batista was in WWE, his body was medically enhanced. According to ESPN, Batista was suspended along with 9 other superstars when they failed WWE's wellness policy. This was all linked to the Signature Pharmacy scandal. However, Batista publicly denied the allegations. To my fans and friends, I categorically denied the report on ESPN.com and repeated by other media outlets that I am or ever have been a customer of Signature Pharmacy of Orlando, an online pharmacy company that is a target of an investigation by the Albany, New York District Attorney's Office. I'm being tested regularly by WWE and I am in full compliance with the WWE wellness policy. I regret the inaccurate reporting and will do all I can in the future to stop any publication or anyone from making such false accusations. A wrestling journalist, Irv Muchnig, also publicly accused Batista of using steroids in a blog post. It was a main reason behind the star suffering repetitive injuries often associated with steroid use. Batista's last wrestling match was against Triple H at WrestleMania 35, and he has no desire to ever wrestle again. Thus, he has no desire to enhance his body any further. However, Batista was still not satisfied with his weight, and he managed to slim down even further, losing over 100 pounds for his role in the movie The Killer's Game. Batista mentioned that he felt good after the weight loss. Number 3. Triple H. Triple H was at the peak physical fitness in the early 2000s. His physique during his reign as the Game was massive. However, by 2004, fans began to notice changes. His pecs would look softer, his arms smaller, and the overall definition was fading, including his abs. Officially, Triple H has only admitted to using prescribed steroids after tearing his quad in 2001, which is common in medical recovery. However, many point to his earlier look as fitting the classic mold of steroid use. There was even an infamous story where Scott Steiner reportedly said he'd only take a WWE drug test if Triple H did too, and that test never happened. But in the later stages of Triple H's career, he managed to gain his physique back, looking in the best shape of his entire career. However, the Game now looks significantly different.
If you have Snap or Medicaid, you may qualify for a free iPhone or Samsung plus up to 10 gigabytes of data. Apply on
Recent images that have surfaced on social media of Triple H on holiday in Greece alongside Stephanie McMahon have shown that the Game is now a new man. The Game no longer had a chiseled physique, and he no longer looked to be in the best shape of his life. At one point in time, Triple H was once a name that prided himself on having one of the best, if not the best bodies in the entire pro wrestling industry. But there are a number of reasons why the Game's body has changed. The first major reason for this change is Triple H's cardiac event a number of years ago. This actually changed the Game's life forever, and the cardiac event was so serious that Stephanie McMahon was convinced that she was going to lose her husband forever. This incident forced the Game to modify the way he engaged with physical activity. Pro wrestling in any capacity was simply out of the question, and this led to Triple H retiring from the ring for good. The cardiac event also meant that high-intensity exercise programs are no longer suitable. This would have been a huge blow for Triple H, as he was a man that was prone to spending hours in the gym every single day. And naturally, the Game has also been off steroids for years now, and we've seen time and time again that when names come off steroids, their bodies react in negative ways. Other areas can protrude, and loose skin can be common. As a WWE executive, Triple H doesn't need to look like a bodybuilder anymore. In fact, the Game is one of the busiest men in pro wrestling today. He oversees the creative for the entire company, so we sat down pretty much all day, whether that being in meetings, running shows, or traveling to the next location for the WWE event. Whilst he doesn't look like Triple H of yesteryear, the Game is healthy and isn't suffering any medical issues. Number 4. Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio is certainly not a name that you would find on this list. At just 5'6", he was always the underdog in wrestling and relied on speed and agility rather than size. However, looking at his WCW Cruiserweight days, Mysterio has definitely bulked up considerably since that time. In fact, in 2007, Mysterio was suspended under WWE's wellness policy, as reports later revealed that he obtained anabolic steroids from a doctor under DEA investigation. Though Mysterio denied knowing breaking the rules, he was suspended again in 2012. But before Mysterio made his shocking return to WWE in 2018, photos emerged of the high flyer looking absolutely jacked, and many believe that Rey was on the juice. However, since then, his physique has gradually slimmed down. At Mysterio's age, a leaner body simply makes more sense for his high-flying skills. Number 5. Hulk Hogan. A few transformations were as shocking as Hulk Hogan in the mid-90s. Hogan was a poster boy for the steroid era. His 24-inch pythons and superhero body made him the biggest wrestling star in the world. However, during Vince McMahon's 1994 steroid trial, Hogan admitted under oath that he had used steroids for years. Almost overnight, the Hulkster's physique deflated. By 1994, he looked dramatically smaller. He was still in good shape, but no longer the larger-than-life figure fans idolized in the early 80s. Number 6. The Ultimate Warrior. Unlike Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior's steroid use was no secret. In fact, the former WWE champion was fired in 1992 after he tested positive for steroid use. Now, Warrior's career wasn't particularly derailed due to being exposed for his steroids, though it didn't help that he was one of the main faces of the scandal. Warrior was initially a bodybuilder before he became a WWE superstar, so he was likely using this stuff before he came into the company. And the WWE Hall of Famer had the perfect body for professional wrestling, but once he got the stuff out of his system, the Ultimate Warrior had the same effects as every wrestler who came off the juice, a more or less defined physique, and he was notably smaller in stature. The change was noticeable when he made his return at WrestleMania 8, as many people even came up with an urban legend that this wasn't even the Ultimate Warrior. Instead, he was somebody totally different, with many believing that it was Kerry Von Erich, who also played the Texas Tornado. However, this is one urban legend that's been debunked for many years. The Ultimate Warrior's use of steroids is also a cautionary tale for many who entertain using dangerous drugs. After being gone from the company for nearly 2 decades, the Ultimate Warrior made his return to pro wrestling in 2013 and was then inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame a year later. Sadly, the day after WrestleMania, he passed away. This was only after making his first WWE Raw appearance in 18 years. The official autopsy said that Warrior died of a heart attack due to cardiovascular disease. While it's never been confirmed that steroids played a role in his death, there's definitely strong research that established the long-term effects of anabolic steroid use and heart damage. Anabolic steroids can cause an enlargement of the heart muscle, high blood pressure, and increase the risk of a heart attack. For many, it put in perspective the damages of steroids and its lingering effects even if you stop using the drugs many years later. Number 7. Ahmed Johnson. Now, Ahmed Johnson is one who has admitted to using steroids, though he claimed on the Monty and the Pharaoh podcast that it was something you had to do if you were going to stay on top, and quote, just about all the boys were on it. Johnson's physique played a huge role in him getting a very early push during his WWE days, becoming the first black wrestler to win the Intercontinental Championship. But once Johnson had faded out of the spotlight, then he didn't need to keep pumping his body up with the juice, so it wasn't hard for him to come off it. However, once he did, Johnson looked completely unrecognizable. The former Intercontinental Champion put on a substantial amount of weight. Number 8. Chris Masters. WWE tried to push a brash and arrogant young superstar in the early 2000s with his picture-perfect body. Now, Chris Masters wasn't a bad performer. He had some charisma and was solid in the ring, but it's clear that Vince was in love with the man's body. He instantly fit what Vince's idea of a WWE superstar was, and it was clear that WWE had big plans for Masters as he was in the WWE title picture within 10 months of his main roster debut. However, Masters' struggle with painkillers would put a significant push on hold. In May of 2006, Vince would force the former WWE star to go to rehab, and when Masters came back in August of 2006, it wasn't hard to see that he wasn't the chiseled god from Vince's wet dreams.
Have you ever wanted to see your home from space? With this free satellite Earth Maps tool, you can zoom right down to your...
Now, Chris Masters has denied that he's ever been on steroids. In fact, that he claimed that the serious weight loss was due to his daily routine and less weightlifting in rehab. However, Masters would be suspended in August of 2007 and November 2007. The last suspension was the final nail in the coffin as Vince McMahon decided to release Masters 6 days after he failed his drug test. Till this day, Masters denies he was ever on steroids, but he was on the same boat as Rey Mysterio, where his name was found on the online pharmacy in 2007 as one of their clients. And nothing ever came of Masters' name being on that list. However, it did fuel further speculation that the former WWE star was on steroids. Masters has adamantly denied ever being on the juice, and other than painkillers, he's also admitted to taking opiates. Though it was frustrating for him that he kept being accused on steroids, Masters stated during his interview with Chris Van Vliet that he understands why people thought this way about him. Number 9. Sting. Now, this may be the most surprising name on the list, but the WWE Hall of Famer has never been too quiet about his steroid use. The former WCW World Heavyweight Champion revealed his steroid use decades ago, and Sting detailed in a Muscle and Fitness article that he used this stuff in the 80s, but stopped in 1990. On the bench, my best was 435. I was younger and I was on the gas too. There were guys who weighed a lot less than I did who could easily do that, but I didn't really train for power or strength. I trained for size. That's all I was training for. My knees are arthritic now. I don't have a whole lot of flexibility left. Thankfully, I got smart somehow or another in 1990 and stopped taking steroids. Totally stopped. A lot of the guys I ran with all those years continued to take steroids year after year. Those guys are having their knees and their hips replaced. I'm not saying everybody who gets their knees and hips replaced took steroids. I just noticed that the guys who did that were too big, too bulky, too heavy, and the body couldn't handle it, and it took its toll. And one of those guys happened to be the Ultimate Warrior. Sting and the Warrior were a tag team named the Blade Runners in the Universal Wrestling Federation. The duo had a rather short-lived stint, but Sting and Warrior were both using this stuff frequently during that time. Sting's physique at the time was almost as big as the Warrior's. If you compare that body to what Sting was in the early 90s in WCW, you can see that there was a definite change. And number 10, Lex Luger. Lex Luger has called himself one of the biggest cheaters in the wrestling industry when it came to steroids. For drug tests, Luger would go the classic route of sneaking in fake urine to provide samples. Sometimes Luger would mask the drugs in his urine by touching it with Vaseline-coated fingers, or even force the technicians into lying on his behalf. Luger spoke with ESPN in 2007 about using steroids, and he started using the drugs before he even stepped into the squared circle. I took these little blue pills called Dianabol, and I took 4 a day, 5 milligrams apiece. You get on these steroids and you train better, eat more, you retain water from them. So I gained 15 pounds in about 2 months. I jumped on it and it worked. And it's the same old thing. Once you do something one time, it leads to another. And then I started in the off season where I would do one cycle for 12 weeks. A friend of mine was an exercise physiologist. She monitored my blood levels. I never took it in season. I just take it in the off season to build as much strength as I could. Now in his book Wrestling with the Devil, Luger maintained that he was steroid free during his time in WWE. But when he made the jump back to WCW, he resumed a 12-week cycle as the WWE Hall of Famer believed that the positives outweighed the negatives in regards to taking steroids. Now, if you look at Luger's body in the 80s and 90s, you'll definitely agree that the steroids did their job. And it's a big reason he got such a huge push early on in his career. But fast forward to today, and you can see that steroids had taken an extreme toll on Luger's body, leaving him in a wheelchair. Luger definitely got the fame and fortune from pro wrestling, but the WWE Hall of Famer's personal life was on a downward spiral, and he's thankfully gotten out for quite some time. But there you have it, folks. WWE wrestlers who
Hey, good video by WrestleLand. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. See you next time.